Hey, what is going on, everyone? This is Nappy Senshi here, and I have something different for the unboxing video. So when I record the unboxing, I forgot to record audio, so I'm just going to go through a quick run through of what you're going to see when you unbox this controller. So the first thing is that you're going to get an instruction pamphlet with all the instructions explaining all of the features of this controller. The next thing that you're going to see is get a little cable, USB-C to USB-A cable for charging and for connecting this controller to your PC. You get a USB dongle for this controller. So this controller only works with the dongle and or wire connection. This controller does not support Bluetooth, so that's a bit of a bummer. You also are going to get these 4 weights. 2 of them are going to be 15-gram weights and 2 of them are going to be 7-gram weights, which we will get into later on. And then you will get the controller itself, which actually I gotta say kind of feels really decent in the hand. And also you got 2 back buttons on the controller that they feel really comfortable. And yeah, this controller is actually pretty decent in the hand. So let's get into all the features of this controller. So I went over to gamepadtester.com to test out the joysticks of this controller, and I have to say, these joysticks are really good. Testing them out in Gamepad Tester, I got a 0.5 error rate on both joysticks, meaning that these joysticks are extremely accurate and some of the most accurate joysticks you can find on the market. I was surprised about these joysticks. So I performed an input latency test on this controller. The first test I did was going to be testing this controller using a USB dongle. After performing the test, I noticed that the controller hit an average input latency of 8 milliseconds, that's because this controller seems to have a lot of 5 to 6 milliseconds input latencies, but then there is a lot of outliers that hits up to 10, 11, to some even hitting up to 13 millisecond input latency, which seems to bump up the average all the way up to about an 8 millisecond input latency, compared to, even though you see on the chart there's a bunch of 5 or 6 millisecond input latencies. Testing this controller with the wire connection, now I had an average of 6 milliseconds input latency, which means that the wire connection beat the wireless dongle connection by 2 milliseconds. Now for esports gamers, that's a big deal. For most people, they probably not gonna know the difference. But what is a bigger deal is that with the wire connection, you see a lot less of these 10 to 13 milliseconds outliers compared to when you're using the wireless dongle. So if you want to use this controller, I highly recommend that you use this controller wired over the USB dongle. So just like the Beitong Zeus controller, the Beitong Asura 3 controller is compatible with the Beitong game app that you could download for Windows. Once you have the app downloaded and the controller plugged in, as you see, you'll see the controller pop up in the software, and you will notice that there is a little color or high precision or high sensitivity. So what makes this controller unique is that you can actually turn these knobs on these joysticks counterclockwise or clockwise. If you turn them clockwise, you actually make the joystick more sensitive, and it will show you a color code, and it'll let you know how sensitive your controller is. If you turn the knob counterclockwise, it will actually make your controller less sensitive, which will show as you can see on the software. And this is actually a really unique feature for this controller, and I have never seen a controller that has this ability to change the joystick sensitivity on the fly for both of these controllers. And just like any other software, you're able to control all of the LED lights and configure the lights. You can map out all the buttons you want to, including the 2 back buttons, and also you can set macro for the back buttons. Of course, you can control the joystick sensitivity, and you can control the joystick's dead zone settings to make it less of a dead zone or more of a dead zone. And finally, you're able to control when the controller goes to sleep. You can calibrate your joysticks and calibrate your triggers as well. So overall, I would have to say that this software is a pretty solid software for this controller, and it's really cool. So another cool customization ability with the Beitong Asura 3 controller is that you can actually adjust the weight of this controller. So the base weight of this controller is about 250 grams of weight. And as you see right here, the controller comes with these 2 15-gram weights and the 2 7-gram weights. So this controller under max load would be around 294 grams, which is really cool that you have the ability to customize the weight of the controller, unlike some other controllers. But yeah, for those people who care about how the controller feels in their hands as far as weight, you have the ability to customize the weight of this controller, which is a really cool thing. So I've been using this controller for a month now, and I will say that the controller is okay overall. So some of the things about this controller is, when I was using this controller in first person shooters, I first want to say that the trigger stoppers actually work very well. No matter what first person shooter I put, I was able to put the trigger stoppers all the way up to the lowest pull input, and it registered with every single first person shooter, no problem, and including even racing games, register as a full trigger squeeze. So that is a really big plus. Now, one of the biggest issues with this controller I experienced while playing first person shooters though, is when I was using this controller with a wireless USB dongle. There was an issue where the controller will just randomly disconnect and reconnect, which will cause like my camera to move like left or right, or my character just to continue moving forward when I don't mean to. And then I have to wait for that controller for like a second for the controller to reconnect for me to gain control of my character. And that really sucks for an $80 controller to have disconnecting and reconnecting issues using the wireless dongle. Now, I did not experience this issue when I used the controller wirely, which is a good thing, but basically that defeats the purpose of the dongle. I really don't recommend you using a dongle, and I really hope Beitong can probably fix this issue with like a firmware update or something. Playing fighting games with this controller, I have to say, like, it's a good experience. Now, if you're someone who really cares about the D-pad, you may not like the D-pad, or at least I didn't like the D-pad. The thing about the D-pad is that this controller has like a circular D-pad, and it feels mushy. And even though the D-pad is very accurate, because of the mushy feeling of this circular D-pad, it is really easy to put in false inputs or inputs you don't mean to. I usually like D-pads where they're like, I can feel the click of me clicking down and then also me clicking left or right. With this D-pad, like, you don't feel that, so it is extremely easy to put in false inputs. And I don't know if somebody who's into like really like mushy deep circular D-pads, I don't know, that's just not my thing. I don't like mushy circular D-pads. It just doesn't work for me. But overall, besides that, like, yeah, the controller performs actually really good. With the wire connection with most games, the ABXY as mechanical keys, that feels great. And the controller performs very well. The joysticks are very accurate. You can change the joystick sensitivity on the fly, which I think is a really cool thing. And also you can put in the weights, or you could take out weights depending on how you like the controller. You can make it heavier or make it lighter, and it's actually a really cool customization feature, which I know a lot of people care about. Me personally, I don't, but it's good to have that option. If I was to give this controller a rating from 1 through 10, I would give the Beitong Asura 3 controller solid 5 out of 10. The thing about this is that the features of this controller are actually really good. Like, the joysticks are very accurate. The trigger stoppers work perfectly fine. Being able to add weights and take out weights to just the weights of the controller, it's a plus, even though I don't really care for it, but I know people who do, so that is a really cool thing. The biggest downsides with this controller is the fact that, one, this controller has issues with this wireless input. The dongle keeps on disconnecting and reconnecting. That is a really big issue for an $80 controller, and I really hope Beitong can fix this with maybe like a firmware update to the controller or to the dongle through the app. Yeah, they really need to work on that. And also a D-pad. Now, usually I wouldn't be too bad on a D-pad if it was just like an arrow D-pad, but the fact that it is like a circular D-pad and it's mushy, that can lead to a lot of like players accidentally putting in inputs they don't mean to put in. Now, the D-pad does work and is very accurate, but it's just the mushiness of a circular D-pad is really easy to put in like false inputs, or to like hold down and then slightly lean to the left and you accidentally hit left down by accident. So, and also another thing too is that for $80, this controller is competing with other controllers like 8-Bits Do Ultimate controller, which arguably offers more features than what this controller offers. And at $80, it's like, this is a really, it's kind of like a hard sell. Like, you can sell this, but compared to other controllers, it doesn't meet up to the competition. So unfortunately, Beitong, I'm sorry, but this controller it's just average at best at $80 and kind of misses the mark on certain things. I would give it a 6 out of 10 if you do fix the dongle issue, but as of right now, this controller is average at best. Okay guys, so that is it for this video. If you made it this far in the video, you clearly liked this video, so you might as well hit that like button for me. And also don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, so that way you guys will know the next video I post on YouTube as far as controller reviews. And also, I have made a Twitter now, so now you can follow me on Twitter at NappySenshi. on Twitter. You will see me post like some cool small stuff I did with controllers or some other controllers I bought. Like, say for instance, I now got a pink version of the Beitong Zeus controller, and it has cat paws and everything else. So follow me on Twitter. You can interact with me. You can send me controllers that you would recommend for me to review, or we can just talk about controllers in general. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.